dispelling the myth of disability being a lack of ability. That's the mission of Able United, a business founded by Michelle Jorgenson and her partner. Able United is trying to fill the gaps in the employment environment as they were promised accommodations and accessibility needs, but those promises were never fulfilled. I'm Grant Hardy. You're listening to The Pulse on AMI Audio. Michelle Jorgenson is the co-founder of Able United and is joining me today. Hey, Michelle, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Just wanted to give you an opportunity to tell us about yourself, your career, kind of introduce yourself as you would like to.
Sure. So I'm 31. I live in Kelowna, British Columbia, on the west coast of Canada, and I work full time for the government of BC. I'm an athlete. I was a professional athlete on our Para-Judo team for Canada, but I've retired from that at the end of 2022. Still doing my martial arts, still having fun, and recently launched my business, as was mentioned earlier. I'm helping my partner launch his new business, planning our wedding for later this year. So
You
busy,
have
busy, busy.
you have a lot going on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And and we've chatted a couple years back about
Mhm.
your Para-Judo career. People can still find that online if you Google AMI this week, and that was a really cool discussion. But now you're branching out into some other areas here, and we're going to get into your business later on. But I'm just curious, growing up there for you, do you want to talk a little bit about the environment? Like, how was it? What were some of the barriers that you faced growing up? Um, how was,
Yeah.
the level of training and stuff that you received? Tell us a bit about that.
Well, it was awful because I was in a small town. I
Mhm,
was the only visually impaired person or child in that town. There
mhm.
was maybe one or two others who were adults and kind of had things going already, but for me to actually make it through school was next to impossible to get any accommodations. Even when I did, for anyone who's used those massive Perkins brailers that are about 10 tons, I was being told by teachers, now make sure you don't swing this in case you hit anybody. I couldn't
Yeah.
swing it if my life depended on it. I was not allowed to participate in sports or really learn any instruments for most of my life. I did get finally one guitar teacher, which was awesome. But
Mhm.
most of them said that they couldn't teach a blind student. They've never taught a blind student. And yeah, I had teachers tell me I would never go to university. I couldn't go to college, couldn't have a career. So I heard the word no a lot, and a lot of people just decided that because I have a disability, I'm not able to do anything.
Yeah, that's something we've heard a lot, especially in a small town, but really all
Mhm.
across the country is, it, no one is saying that um, people don't maybe have limitations or things that won't work for you, but other
Mhm.
people often decide your limitations for you, and that's really frustrating.
Exactly.
Also, kind of the luck of the draw, getting some people who are supportive, some teachers that were maybe less supportive. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess, like, what effect did that have on you? How did you learn to kind of like accept yourself and gain some confidence to succeed?
Well, the initial effect is I was just a very angry child, right?
Mhm.
I had heard no so much, and I really couldn't get anywhere because no one was giving me the opportunities. So,
Mhm.
in my mid teens, I ended up moving across the country to Ontario, and that's kind of where things started to open up, where people were saying, okay, well, we have to do things differently, but let's see how we can do it differently in terms of my education. I started to actually progress in my schooling and get good grades, and that's what really pushed me to go to college. And initially, yeah, people telling me no told me pushed me to go to college too, because
Mhm.
you are not going to make a decision about my life for me. That is my decision and my decision alone. Um so it did have that effect, and then kind of moving out of the small town, going to Ontario where it was more densely populated, and seeing
Mhm.
that, oh, people do give you opportunities. to coming back to BC and moving to Kelowna, which is a fairly large city for us here,
Yep.
and really having those opportunities and having people just say, "Oh, yeah, I noticed you have a bit of issue with your visions. Let me know what I can do to help. How can I teach you and how can I work with you?" So, going from being a 7-year-old child hearing, "Oh, I can't teach her to swim," to a 23-year-old adult saying, "Yeah, sure, you want to try kickboxing? Let's go. I'll partner up with you. Just tell me how to help." It was a
Yeah.
huge difference.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And do you
Yeah.
think that things are getting a bit better in general, or it's still kind of like a luck of the draw?
It's still very much a luck of
Yeah.
the draw.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, could you talk briefly about how sports helped you gain more confidence and self acceptance?
Yeah, so sports was huge. When I initially went into MMA, I was trying to kind of discreetly sign the forms and stuff like that so that they couldn't see me looking close at them. But really getting into that environment where there was a huge acceptance of, listen, we all have different bodies, different abilities, different skill levels, and we want to work with you and we want to help you. We want to learn with you. Like, there's not many blind athletes in this area, but let's try and let's learn together. So that was a huge impact. I was in university at the time, so I was getting my education and I was seeing the progress there, more helpful people. But to really take that and totally flip it on its head, right? Like, we all
Mhm.
know that blind people can go to school and there's audiobooks, there's enlarged fonts, there's things like that. But to say, hey, I have next to no vision and I'm kickboxing. It was huge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And huge just finding people who are supportive as well
Yeah.
of that desire to train or compete as well.
Yeah.
Um, so, okay, let's chat a little bit about your career. Sorry, did you say you are currently still doing work for the provincial government or?
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
work full time.
yeah,
I'm
okay.
working with them full time right now as a complaint analyst, and I'm in my last 2 weeks in that role. Starting February, I'm going to be an investigating officer, so moving up.
That's really cool. How did you get into that career?
I actually found out through the CNIB. I had worked for the CNIB as a summer student and stayed on as a volunteer. One of the managers there told me about this opportunity, the Work Able program. So it's an internship for recent post secondary graduates with disabilities to gain employment in the government. It's a 1 year paid internship. And then after that, you may continue, you may not. It depends what you want to do and if they want to keep you on, that sort of thing. But I started with the government under Work Able in 2019 with the Ministry of Labor, and I am still there. I've held a variety of administrative roles. I've been a licensing officer, currently a complaint analyst, but I just started that role December 9th, 2024. And as of my last day doing that is going to be January 30th. And then moving into the investigating officer. So less than
Okay,
2 months.
that's fantastic. Well, maybe I'll ask you a more general question then about
Mm.
accommodations in the workplace or in school, not put you on the
Mhm.
spot too much in about your current role, but for a blind person who's just maybe going into college or starting employment, or in general, a person with a disability, what's the process like to get the accommodations you need, and how does it need to be improved?
So the process is very much on you, unfortunately. A lot of employers and a lot of educators do have a desire to help, but they don't know where to find the resources, or they're restrained by budgetary and process and, this, that, and the other thing. That's where it needs to be improved. There's a desire to help in most cases. In some cases, maybe a little bit phoned in. Um, I found in universities, when I went to university, there was the Disability Resource Center,
Yeah.
and it was great in the sense that I could get access to audiobooks and I could get enlarged final exams. And at times I got the completely incorrect final exam for a course I wasn't even in. And then other times I was given a regular size font exam and actually asked by the instructor, the person supervising the exam, well, do you really need it enlarged? Honey, yeah,
Yeah.
I do. That's your job. I can't see it. Like, yeah, that's why I asked. Um, to going into government, and government is better, I find, than a lot of employers, because
Yeah.
they have the funding and the resources, right? But the issue there is also the policy, the process. So, for example, I now have Zoom text on my work computer, and I'm glad that I have that. But the process to get that put in, oh my gosh, because it is not an approved software, whereas JAWS is an approved software, and JAWS is great. I don't know how to use JAWS. I don't use it.
Hmm.
So did not help me, right? So there's
Yeah,
kind
that's
of desire to help, but some barriers there as well. And there needs to be working more with people with lived experience to say, hey, this is not a malicious software. This just blows up the screen a little bit so we can read it, and get those things kind of pushed through in that context.
well, it's also just totally different audiences, right? Who would use
Yeah.
Zoom text versus JAWS, so it's not one or the
Yeah.
other. I would imagine that it's particularly difficult for rather than being someone who's maybe oh, I've worked for like 30 years, I know exactly what I need, but for someone who like maybe doesn't know exactly what
Hmm.
accommodations that they would need, that would be very difficult.
Yeah.
Um, you participated in an accessible entrepreneurial program, did you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
is that the Work Able
no.
program? Okay, so tell me a little bit about that.
So the one I'm in is called Entrepreneurs on the Rise, and I'm just wrapping it up. It ends in March of 2025, and it's specifically for women with disabilities. But there's also a program that's all genders under Work BC, with Community Futures BC. So you can get in, and if you have a disability or identify as a person with a disability, you can get in and get some coaching from a business coach one on one each week. And they help you with courses and little modules and programs to help you launch your business and make it successful so that you can kind of learn, the little tips and tricks about taxes and marketing and networking, and who are you selling to, are you selling products, services, like what are you doing? And it could be anything from just starting up, hey, I have this idea and I'm not sure how to make it work, to I've got a business and I want to scale it, I want it to grow, and I just need some help. So it really is for those people who, want to be small business owners, potentially leading into large business owners.
What's your experience been like in that program?
It's been great. I've found the coaching to be very helpful. They're very big on accessibility because the program was actually started by a person with a disability. So they're very focused on this needs to be accessible. And I really love that. They let you take the lead. It's your business. They're not telling you you must do this, but they are providing supports from people who kind of know and saying, hey, how can I support you this week? What are you doing this week? What are your goals? And they hold you accountable so that you do have to keep progressing. You've got to work on your business. You've got to, make it your own and make it successful. But they provide the support and the resources to do that. They've got me connected with Chamber of Commerce. They actually got me connected with the person who started this program so that I can, better understand how to work with other businesses so that I'm not just coming in saying, hi, you're doing accessibility wrong, I'm going to fix it for you, and getting shooed out the door
Mm.
because I would shoo you out the door, right?
Yeah, that's so helpful to have that guidance. What
Yeah.
what led you to want to start your own business?
My past experiences,
Mm.
100%. So just kind of going through the motions of being a visually impaired woman and really seeing the limits in accessibility to education, to employment, even just things like I opened my RDSP when I was 26. I didn't know what that was. The disability tax credit I found out about when I was 19, and I didn't really know how to claim it. You know what I mean? Like all of these things where it's like, well,
Yeah.
what is this and how do you do it? So just so many barriers to information. My partner also has a disability. He has a heart condition. He has a learning disability. So he's experienced the same sort of thing in a different way where like he's hit barriers that I haven't hit and I've hit barriers he hasn't hit. And we're like, what are we doing? We're able to work, we want to work, but just because we have to do things a little differently, we're getting pushback, we're getting fired, we're getting all this negative things. And even with school, where I did just fine in school, my fiance has a learning disability. He says, well, I can't go to school. I said, yes you can. I see how well you do with things hands on. Yes you can. He's got his forklift certificate now. It's a college program. He attended, he graduated, perfect score. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, that was really the driving force and the struggle to get accommodations even in my current job. And I don't mean that bashing my employer. I mean that as government process is incredibly difficult. And as much as my supervisors and managers were working with me and we're trying to achieve the same goal, it's paperwork and paperwork and paperwork and process and HR and IT and approve this and decline that. And it was so much of a pain. And I went, okay, this is clearly very difficult. Let me show you how to do it. I've done it successfully for 30 years. I will help you. And that's what started the business.
I feel, yeah, definitely some of those barriers that are in place are just very artificial. I'm actually glad to know I'm not the only person who didn't know about the RDSP until my late 20s. So I
Yeah.
don't feel so silly not now. So, Michelle, tell me about Accessible Best Life Experience United, Able You. What is it? What services do you provide?
Yeah, so we started with consulting and just kind of assisting people to find the resources that help the individual, like the RDSP, like the um, tax credits, funding for education, assistive devices for the home and workplace, and things like that. We then branched out into helping employers because it's one thing to say, here's the stuff you need to get employment, but
Mhm.
retention is kind of key. And if your employer is not accessible and they don't know what they're doing wrong, right? They want to help, but they're not sure how. So we started reaching out to businesses. In talking to some of my clients, some of my friends, it led me into a bit of what I'm calling accessible life coaching. I was very anti life coaching initially because I was like, that just seems it's life, do it. But I'm like,
Mm.
no, we all need some help, right? And it, especially when you're kind of trying to navigate relationships with people, be that employment or friendships, or you're trying to understand, like, okay, I want to do this thing. I want to start my business. I want to go to school. I want to, how? And just having a little bit of help from somebody who's actually done it. Now that I understand what life coaching actually is, it's not, that bad of a thing. So I said, okay, sure. Like, let's do that and help some people. One of my favorite things to do is the accessible event planning. That initially came from planning my own wedding that is going to be happening, my gosh, later this year. Yikes.
Aw.
And just doing fun little things with that to make sure that I've got about 25 blind people coming and various older relatives with mobility aids. And I'm like, no, they're going to be included. And we're going to have, how do we get audio description for the ceremony? And how do we make sure that you can navigate with a wheelchair and a cane and a walker? And so putting that together, and I went, other people deserve this too for their grad parties, for their weddings. Let's do that. So it it really just grew and spiraled into like, what do you want to do with your life and how can we help with that? Going into 2025, I do want to give people a bit more autonomy and I do want to give
Mhm.
myself a bit more time. So I'm also working on some information packages that are just going to be active resources. And it is for British Columbia right now because I just started at the end of 2024. It's me and my fiance. We're only two people, so we can manage what we can manage right now. Hoping to branch out, but like, here's the resources in BC. Some are federal, some are provincial. Will help you at your local level to find the resources in your city, in your town that, maybe it's not realistic to put in the information package. We're also going to do some courses and workshops for, we're working with the local school district and things like that and other businesses to really help them and say, okay, here it is, it's recorded, play it back as many times as you want. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
let's how do we make this functional? Because the same questions come up over and over and over again. The
Mhm.
more you deal with people, the same questions come up. So for consistency's sake, if nothing else, right, let's
Yeah.
do a workshop on it and here's your question answered.
So you do a really a wide variety of consulting related to disabilities, either for people with disabilities or for non-disabled people who are looking for a little help in providing accommodations and support. Uh,
Yeah.
the event planning aspect really appeals to me, especially because I'm sure you find not so much that a blind person maybe wouldn't be able to show up for a wedding, but that you would just maybe end up sitting, on a chair,
Yeah.
kind of having less of an idea of what's going on than
Yeah.
a sighted person would. So, what do you find the best way for inclusion at events to be?
Well, to talk to people with experience, right?
Mhm.
To
Yeah,
get that broader perspective. I have an experience with vision loss. I don't have an experience with navigating uneven ground on a wheelchair. You know what I mean? Like these sorts
yeah.
of things. So I really communicate with the community. I try to get perspectives from people that have different abilities, different disabilities, and like, hey, how are you navigating? What are you where could you use some help? What have you found very helpful? And really trying to always expand my knowledge and understanding so that I can help people and not just be that person that says, I'm the expert, listen to me. Well, I'm the expert in my experience and I want to help you. And I've got a better understanding than someone without a disability, sure, but we need to continue to learn and grow and understand as people's lives evolve, as technology evolves, right? We need to continue to grow. So um, that would be the main thing with planning an event is really saying, okay, what are the obvious things here? We don't want obstacles. So how can we limit the obstacles and the tripping hazards and, wider walkways and things like that? But really talking to someone who's done this, talking to someone who knows and, taking it down to the little details, right? Of okay, when you're seating, are you making sure that there's an area for people who may be overstimulated more easily so that
Hmm.
they're not right next to a speaker, so that they're not right next to a buffet? Do you have earplugs in the bathroom with your other little goodies like soaps and lotions and mints that you're giving out? You got earplugs for them, right? Like those sorts of things. Yeah.
Um, what has been one of the highlights or the most rewarding aspect of being in business so far?
The most rewarding aspect has really just been seeing how it impacts people's lives and seeing people finding these resources and being so happy and so grateful. I've had moms say to me like, "Oh, thank you. You don't know how relieved I am just to not be doing this alone." Because it's hard when
Mhm.
their child's just diagnosed, right? And then the mom guilt comes in and like, "What did I do?" You didn't do anything. Your kid's going to have a great life. Like don't let this hold them back. They're going to do stuff differently. We'll figure it out together. But you've got support. That's been the highlight for me is the parents really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to check with you. We touched base on this a little bit, but everybody is told that we have to have careers to work, obviously, and we all want to have careers too. But it's so challenging for people to get started, to find the accommodations, and just the acceptance that they need. Would you say that being an entrepreneur is the most viable or one of the most viable pathways if you have a disability like blindness? And how do people kind of get started, follow in your footsteps?
I think it can be.
Yeah.
The thing to understand with entrepreneurship is definitely you need an idea, you need to pursue it. And you can change your idea, you can change things up, you can move in different directions, but you do need to understand if you're going to go into business, it's not a 9 to 5 job. You're not getting paid by the hour, right? So you're not going to have an income right away. You do need to lay the groundwork. You do need to bust your butt and really put that work in to get somewhere. Programs like Entrepreneurs on the Rise, they're very helpful because these are people that can support you in that endeavor and really guide you in the right direction. But going to your chamber of commerce, finding mentors, finding people who have been there, done that, and telling them, I'm new, I want to try this, I want some help. I think it can be very rewarding. It's more flexible. It allows for that income generation that, you may, if you're struggling to find employment, it allows for those things, but understanding that it is definitely, you need to put the work in for months, possibly for years to get there.
Michelle, can you offer any advice for people who are struggling with self-acceptance?
Baby steps. Baby steps is key. So just little things, finding something that you like, something that you do well, and focusing on that, and then going from there. Right? Maybe you like the way that you dress. Go from there. Find your baby steps and find your people. Find good, supportive people that want to succeed and want to grow with you.
Michelle, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us today on The Pulse.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You can find Able United online at ableunited.org. You can listen to The Pulse on AMI Audio wherever you get your podcasts, and the episode is available as a video podcast on YouTube. Thanks so much to Michelle Jorgenson for her time here today. I'm Grant Hardy. Thank you for listening to The Pulse.